our next panelists are going to talk about some broader efforts to be able to measure impact both from an outcomes perspective and also from a cost perspective as we're moving forward with realignment. And we do have a shorter time frame for the next two presentations, so we're not going to be doing a formal Q&A, but all of the presenters are going to be staying with us for the rest of the time, so I encourage you to find some time to talk with them, or also feel free to join them at some of the small table discussions tomorrow morning. And we're going to be starting out with a discussion of a multi-county study on the impact of realignment that's being led by the Public Policy Institute of California. And we have Ryken Grattet, who's joined us today to talk about that.
I was going to break a little bit with tradition and stand in part so that I can see if the slides are actually turning. Do we have a slide advancer? First of all, thanks for the opportunity to speak here today. Thank you. I'm going to describe a project that PPIC has developed in collaboration with the Board of State and Community Corrections to begin to address some of the gaps in what we know about how offenders and communities are doing under public safety realignment. First, let me say a couple of things very briefly about the Public Policy Institute of California. PPIC is a nonpartisan nonprofit charitable organization. It's funded by an endowment from William Hewlett. And what we do is conduct research on, social science research on policy questions in California. We are not an institute that does contracts with governmental agencies as partly because we are interested in protecting our status as a nonpartisan organization. We do seek funding from other foundations and from the federal government. Over the last couple of years, PPIC has built a focus on corrections and criminal justice policy, and I provided our website if you're interested, ppic.org, if you want to take a look at some of the things that we published recently on that. Okay, so let me start fairly broadly with kind of identifying kind of the two big unknowns, I think. There may be other unknowns in the post-realignment world, and in some ways the first group are what I would call impact questions, which is questions really about what the impact of realignment has been on things like crime, on recidivism, on community corrections institutions across the state. And then there's questions that are really about effective strategies. What kinds of services, programs, interventions, strategies can be used to bring about better outcomes in offenders. In some ways, the first of these questions is sort of a backwards-looking question. What has been the impact? The second set of questions are really about forward-looking. What are the things that we ought to be investing in to achieve better outcomes? And so what are the sources of data that we have available to us to try and address some of these questions? And first of all, there's information available, data from past research. We'll talk a little bit about the Pew study in a minute, which really leverages that research literature on effective intervention. More locally in California, we have official crime and correction statistics provided by state agencies, Department of Justice and CDCR, and those sources of data can tell us a little bit about what's going on in the state. There are some new data collection initiatives by the Board of State and Community Corrections and by CPOC that are adding to our understanding of what's happening in relation to realignment. And then there's county-level reports where we've been hearing about some of the research and data collection efforts that have been going on. But generally speaking, those are relatively unstandardized and make comparison across counties sort of difficult. So it was in this context of that sort of map of data that we identified really a role for ourselves as an institute to help the state and counties try to develop some data infrastructure in order to kind of make some things visible about realignment that were are not visible from the existing sources of data that we have. And so I want to just sort of briefly say that this project really emerged from a dialogue with the Board of State and Community Corrections, which took place really over the course of last year. And in that process, we met with the Sheriff's Association, with the Governor's Office, with the CSAC and the CPOC and DOJ and CDCR, all of the sort of relevant state level entities, to try and design something that worked for those entities. And what we came up with is a somewhat deeper dive than the existing sources of data allow on a small set of counties, 11 counties around the state. And in the spring, we began to reach out to those counties. We were told by some that counties would not be interested in this sort of thing. We quickly discovered that wasn't true, that pretty much everywhere we went around the state, we discovered a lot of enthusiasm for guidance around data collection, strategies for collecting data in exactly the manner that I'm going to describe. And we selected our counties sort of out of those initial visits. And the counties are represented in the map. You may see your county up here. And we've been to all of these counties and sort of secured support from the CCP level folks. And then just recently we have gone back to meet with people who work with data in the counties to do some additional follow-up. To give you a sense of sort of what we're doing and why we're doing it, it's kind of a little bit important to sort of say a little bit about the logic of research. And in some ways, this table is meant to represent that. There are really kind of four general kinds of things that you need to capture about offenders and what their experiences are. The first is going from the right side of the table to the left. There's outcomes, clearly defined outcomes, ideally, which by virtue of doing a multi-site project, we can try and provide some guidance about how to do consistent outcomes. We need to nail down what kinds of interventions are being applied, what services, what systems of sanctioning in response to bad behavior, what other novel, innovative kinds of strategies are emerging. Those are the things that we really hope will change offender behavior, so identifying who's getting what is kind of important. And then because it's not enough to know just what the outcomes were and what people got, it's also important to know who the people are so that you can make apples to apples comparisons. You don't want to be attributing effectiveness or ineffectiveness to an intervention if it turns out that the groups to which the intervention was applied and not applied are quite different in makeup in terms of risk and need and so forth. So those things are sometimes called control variables that you need to make adequate comparisons across groups. And then you need identifications, ways of linking individuals, because inevitably the kinds of data we're talking about come from different parts of the local criminal justice system, and you need the ability to link across those different domains. So as we've been going around, we've tried to think very deeply about how we can leverage those state-level data sources in order to lighten the burden on the counties that are working with us. We can get quite a bit of the recidivism data from the Department of Justice. We've signed an MOU with BSCC to allow us to access that data. CDCR is willing to supply data on the PRCS and state parolee pieces of the population, as well as a lot of the background characteristics of those. But there's still quite a bit of information that we need to get from the counties. And part of the reason for our recent visits to the counties is to identify what counties currently are collecting. We've been stunned at how much data is being collected, and also an openness towards guidance about what additionally might be collected that would be useful to learn some lessons about effective strategies. But we're also running into some obstacles, and there's some challenges associated with collecting this kind of data. And I've listed a few of them here. The purpose of our visits to the counties in the last month and a half is, as I said, to meet with people who work with data, and part of that is really to serve the purpose of helping us identify what the obstacles are to doing this kind of data collection for the state. PPIC will write a report out of that. The report will probably not be titled what I've got here. What do we need to know about the realigned population? Why don't we know it? But it will essentially cover that topic. And in addition, we're looking for counties to identify for us and for themselves what kinds of resources they might need in order to, or technology or expertise they might need in order to provide data of this sort. So over the next few months, PPIC will continue to do technical assistance to the counties to sort of meet with them and teach them sort of what is needed, what form the data will come in. We also are working closely with the BSCC to enhance their ability to receive that data. Starting in January, we hope to be returning to the counties to begin to capture some of that initial data. But we're kind of not expecting that this is going to be completely smooth to begin with. PPIC is committed to using its endowment to fund our activities for a 3-year period. And that's gives us some breathing room to solve some problems for the counties. After a 3-year period, PPIC's role would be to sort of step back, move from a kind of technical assistance role into more of a kind of traditional research role. We would be accessing that data, as would other researchers from around the state, as would the counties be able to access this kind of research, or this kind of data. At that point, BSCC considers whether or not they want to expand to include other counties, or take it in a slightly different direction, or gathering different kinds of data, or ceasing the project altogether. So that's the project in a nutshell. I'd be happy to take questions after the session, I guess. Thank you.